Wayne Dorvan, live from Northern Colorado. And as you can see, we have a little different situation here today. I've got my guest with me live. We've got Sara Mayer with us. And Sara is my partner, actually. This is going to be fun. Before we talk with Sara, though, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the future. And I'm actually looking across at our producers as I say this. We're actually using a webcam today. Usually we have a dedicated camera that I forgot to bring today. So we're using our webcam, and the picture will be a little lower quality than it is sometimes, but I think it'll be good for you. Now, you're going to be about 45 seconds delayed from us. So you'll see everything a little bit afterwards. And the reason for that is that if we just start going on to our ranting rage about something, we can be aborted. No, that's not true, actually. Not a whole lot of editorial ability as we're live here. But 2 weeks from now, on the third Wednesday of the month, we'll be having our next Economics in Action webinar. And Deb's going to tell me who the speaker will be in just a second. And we are all invited, and we'd love to have you. And it looks like we're hearing that everybody is seeing and hearing us, which is great. And so please come and listen again. Please put questions that you have in the chat box. And we might try something on this time, if some of you would allow us. We have a new platform that we're using called Webinar Jam Studio, which is an advancement of our original one. We might call on one of you, if you'd like us, if you wouldn't mind doing it, to see if you want to actually ask a question live. We can do that now with this rather than it coming just through the chat. I might even pick on Mark because I know he's always around, and see if he'd be willing to just ask a question. And we're going to be doing it a little bit for the first time to see how it works anyway. So that's that. I wanted to bring up one other thing, though. Don't do too often about products, but if you can see this little bag here that's on the camera, you can see it says Cutting Globe. This is actually a pretty cool product out of Ireland that I'm going to pull one from another container out to show you specifically what it looks like. This is one of the cutting globes, and it's always hard on film to see size. And this is about 1.5 inches in diameter. And as you can see, you can take it apart, into 2 pieces. And so what this is to be used for is to take cuttings or clones or starts from plants and to allow them to get a start on their growth while they're still on the plant before you take and plant them in the ground. This is an amazing new technology that I think is so unique, is so simple, that it's going to blow up the whole gardening community. And we are fortunate because we have the exclusive rights to sell it in the United States. And therefore, it's taken us a while. I haven't said anything about this because it wasn't until just last week that we got that exclusivity. Our partner in this business, and this business is called Saving the Green, is Teresa Tierney. You've probably seen or heard Teresa's name if you've been around us at all. Teresa's been with us for 1.5 years or a little longer. She was in Syracuse, New York. She moved to Ireland about almost a year ago during the summer last year. That's where her husband's family is from historically. And so she's living in Ireland now, in a Galway area, which is somewhere on the west side of the country. I really hope to get there soon. She came upon this product at a garden store that is there locally, and it turns out the manufacturers are right there. And so, again, the way this works is you would take a stem of a plant. I wish I would have brought one in here. And for anything in this case that would be, this is what, Sara, about 1/2 inch around. So it could be a rose, it could be a tree of some kind or whatever. And you would take and cut the bark off of the piece of the stem about this length, not quite the total length of the width of the ball here. And then you would take peat moss or something that would just be a little soil mix. You'd put it back in. You'd then put the globe back together where the plant's now growing up through the middle of it like this. And you also would probably want to use some kind of a salve around the part that you trimmed the bark off with. And they make hormones that we're actually going to be selling at some point to be able to do for that purpose. There are natural ones. Actually, you can use willow water is one that I've heard that's really good. Supposedly what's called eaves honey, which means honey that's produced by bees at the end of their season. So in our case here, probably like October, November, supposedly it's not honey that's sweet enough to use for other purposes, but that's another thing you could use. Bottom line is you put that in here, and what happens is the plant will start to grow roots right in this area. The reason the ball is red and white, it's clear actually on this side, is they've done a lot of research and found that it's actually better that it be dark on one side. So you would want to have the dark side facing the traditional sun location. So let's say west, like this. Actually, it'll grow both ways, but this will do better. And the roots will start to grow. Anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks later, you'll actually see the ball start to try to break apart because the roots are getting so thick. When it gets to that point, all you do, if this was going down to the bigger stem or to the I mean, I think of the word now, it's the big branch of a trunk. Yeah, trunk. Down to the trunk, you would cut it off right below the ball here, and you'd take this out. You'd take the ball off. You'd now have this amount of soil base and roots. You'd put it in the ground, and that's the amazing thing. It'll grow 10 times better. I don't know how many of you have tried to take cuttings and put them in the ground. I bought $40 worth this spring. I bought blueberries, raspberries, grapes, and blackberries that I got from a local store, $10 each, did everything they said, put them into the ground, and they're now just sticks sticking out of the ground. Well, that's pretty much everybody I've ever talked to. That's their experience. Well, this is going to go on the ground as a growing tree. Now, you may already, or plant or bush or whatever you've done, you may want to protect it from predators, because that's been a little bit of the problem with the ones that I have, I know. But it would already be well established. And there's a plant that, is it called wisteria? I'm not a real big plant that I guess if you would normally plant it, it takes 5 years before it'll produce flowers. If you took this off of a flowering wisteria plant, I'm told, and put it in the ground, after 6 weeks, it'll flower that same season. You gain 5 to 7 years. This is going to be a miracle product. So we're going to start selling it on a website called Saving the Green, which isn't up yet. It's in a development stage, or else I'd have Brian show it to you right now. And there'll be an Amazon store that we'll have for it, and we'll sell it online. So just want to let you know, we don't pitch our own stuff that often, but this is so cool this time of the year. And by the way, relatively inexpensive. You buy what's called a variety pack, which is what this one was that I showed you initially. And there's a large one. You can see that's quite a bit bigger. Yeah. This has got like a 3/4 inch hull than the size that I have here. And I think there's 3 of the smaller size. And I think that's going to be like $15, something like that. Don't quote me on the price, but it's really inexpensive and clearly reusable. So this isn't intended to be used once. You can use this over and over again. So that's something I wanted to briefly talk about, which then leads us into our interview for today, which is with Sara. And so, hi, Sara.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. And you were able to get away from the chickens again today a little bit? All right. Looks like we're even getting some questions. Sarl says, audio and picture is fine. We're going to play with your chickens. Oh, okay. That's somebody that's out at the ranch. So she's saying that she's going to go out and play.
New babies.
Yeah. So, Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself, just your sort of history as a person, where'd you grow up, and sort of what's led you to where you're at today in the business situation.
Okay. I'm from Montrose, Colorado. It's down in the southwest part of the state, right next to New Mexico. I have had chickens since I was 6 years old. My dad found them one time when I was hunting, or when he was hunting actually, and he brought me home my first hen, Jenny Penny. And since then, I've kind of fell in love with chickens, and I always had a couple. And then through FFA, Future Farmers of America, they have this program that you have to do every year. It's called a Supervised Agriculture Experience Program. And so you have to keep records, you can sell things, you can have a job. But I already had these chickens, so I decided to buy 200 more and start my own business. And well, I started with 25, and then things went crazy because you can't just have one chicken. You have to have a lot. So I had 250, and I sold at farmers market until I went to CSU. In 2009, I graduated and went to CSU. And I had to leave my chickens behind with my cousin, and he continued the business and showed me that it could go huge. And so I decided, hey, why not? I have a degree in animal science and ag business. I need to get back into this, and started up here in the Front Range.
And what's your business called?
Sarah's Pick of the Coop.
Okay.
I kept my name.
Right now, if you are seeing it, you're seeing a bunch of our chicks or Sarah's chicks that are out there. So anyway, so you did this through up until when you came to college, and then your cousin came. And tell us, I mean, you said he's done all right with it. So what has he been able to do with what you started? And does he have a real business there?
Yeah, he continued with the chickens, and he also added on some pork and turkeys. But with the chickens, he went from my 250 to 300-ish that I had when I left to now he has 900 this year. And he continues to sell out every week. And so he's doing really well. He's selling to places like Telluride, some restaurants that are really fancy, and then just the local farmers markets.
By the way, Montrose, Colorado, for those of you watching from all over the world, is not
it's tiny.
Utopia. It's not big. It's tiny. It's not a wealthy community by any means. And now, in contrast, Telluride is a ski area. And in the summer, it's just a vacation spot for people from all over the world, really. But it's not right next door. How far is Telluride from Montrose?
It's about an hour and a half.
Okay, so probably as far or farther than we are from Denver, right?
Yes.
So he's kind of marketing into some place that's not real close. And we'll talk more about this, but if I were to go to the grocery store right now and buy eggs from production farmer that are growing chickens in ways that we probably aren't real excited about, we'll talk more about, but how much would I pay?
Which kind of eggs are you looking like? Free range or?
Yeah, let's say what the grocery store is selling as a free range.
$5 to $7.
Okay.
If you go to Whole Foods, $6 to $8.
Okay. And if I was buying one with just as eggs in a carton,
$2.
$2. What a contrast, right? And I'm going to ask a question of the audience. All of you, if you would, why don't you tell us what you pay for eggs and tell us how you get them? And remember, we just categorized two different types. We called one, which was, I'm calling it factory chickens, and there aren't going to be any representations about their quality at all. They'll probably be from places like Tyson, or they won't probably say Tyson, but it'll be their growers, and there'll be millions of chickens growing in a space that's not much bigger than your house, and so on. And those will be that $2 number, right? And if it's going to be free range, organic, in the grocery stores even, it's going to be in that 5 to 7 range.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll go back to that. But why don't all of you maybe just chime in and say what you pay? So Dawn actually is biased. She says $5 from Sarah. That's not fair because she buys from her. But we'll look and see what other people comment on. So he's doing it now. And so now tell us how you sort of came to the decision to do what you're doing, and how did we get together? And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
So I was working as a barista and being kind of miserable, which I have an animal science degree and felt like I was just kind of wasting my time. And I went and visited my cousin one day, and there's some pictures from when I visited him actually on here. And it just kind of brought back to my memory, like, oh my gosh, chickens are awesome. It's something I enjoy doing. Why am I not doing this? So I started searching for a place to go, and I know Janine from the ranch. And so I've been posting on Facebook about my adventures, trying to find someone, and she messaged me one day and was like, hey, I know this cool guy. This is a really neat ranch. You should come check it out. And that's how I came up to the ranch.
Yeah, and this was in, time flies because it's June now, but I think either December late or January, right? It was sort of right at that time frame. And we had not decided about doing anything immediately, and we have a train going by right now, but there's going to be one more set of whistles here in a second, so put up with that a little bit. I'm going to look and see what other people are saying. So somebody else, Charles, says free range brown for $4.50. I want Mark to say what he pays for them over in Pakistan or in Bangladesh. Sorry, Mark, in Bangladesh, and see what he says that they pay there, equivalent in US dollars. Mark actually spent a bunch of years in the U.S., so he can make that conversion, I'm sure, in his head. Anyway, so you came out, and we were going to be doing other sorts of partnerships, and we talked maybe long term about chickens, but it wasn't an immediate thing on our list. But Sarah came in and she talked with us about it, and we were excited, and she had some other options, but we were thinking that this would be good. By the way, the picture that might be up now is your cousin's place. Yeah. And I guess let's stay on this picture real quick before I go on. Those are obviously free range. I mean, I think I'm going to ask about that later, but I live it now because I see these chickens. They can go, those chickens right there can go a lot of places, right? They're not being limited
50
a whole
acres
lot.
there that they can all travel around. They choose about 5 that they really, really like.
Right. That's been my experience. And honestly, they do create territories really for themselves, and they don't like to go beyond those, and they really won't. So those of you that are thinking about chickens more than even just having a couple, they really don't range that far. And if you're thinking about them, and it's interesting in city areas now, where one of the real concerns is, well, if I allow chickens in my neighborhood, they're going to wander everywhere, and people aren't going to have them. They're probably not going to do that much of that. But anyway, so let's go back to timing. So we started talking, and so now let's fast forward till today. So, and meaning, give us the series of events that happened, because we were starting from nothing. You had passion, you had an idea, we had land, we had possibly some equipment and supplies, and you're actually going to look at various pieces of those as we look through here. And this is one thing that we had, which was a dog transport unit for greyhounds, actually. And that the top of this, not what you're seeing, the bottom is actually made from wood that we constructed, but it was made such that Sarah's not the tallest person in the world, but that she could almost stand up inside here now. And this, what you're looking at here, is probably 6 feet, maybe as much as 8 feet wide, actually, right? And about 10 feet long, right, in scale. So that's just an example of something we both brought to the table. But we didn't have any of this put together as we started this. So talk about what we did to get going, what you did.
So first we were working on building a brooder so we could order chickens, and we built this same brooder in a very poor location at first, because it was really nice out in February, and we built it, and then it got snowy again, and then it melted, and the whole mountain drained right into the coop. So we had ordered the chickens already, so we had to move it really quickly. So we got the team and everybody joined in, and we built the bottom really fast. Actually, the day that I came back with chicks from Montrose, they were putting the finishing touches on right as I got there.
And we'll get to that. Okay. So keep going.
So we get the first set of chickens. They ended up in my basement for a couple weeks because their brooder was flooded, and we were rebuilding, and it was really cold out. And then, so the brown leghorns arrived. So there's 200 of them. They lived in my basement. Let's see, there's those guys right there. So they are really great white egg layers, but they're really kind of flighty, so they're not the most friendly. So they arrived. Then we got the brooder finished last minute, and we converted one other shed into a brooder for the leghorns, so that we would have 2 available for the 2 different age groups. So then the second group arrived. We got them settled, and then we started building the large coop, which we'll have 2 to 3 of. So that's the large coop there. It's built mainly out of pallets.
And I'm going to tell Brian, boy, get some pictures of that on a nice day, Brian. This is not what it looks like. It sure seemed like it in May, but that picture makes it look like we live in Seattle. And yeah, that's what it was kind of like in May. But that stream you see there, that doesn't run typically, but about 1 week a year. But it's been running now for almost 6 weeks.
It's dry today.
And it's finally completely dry. And again, this thing looks a lot nicer and better. And I don't know if you get a perception of size. How big is that, Sarah?
It's about 16 feet wide by 25 or 26 long.
Okay. And we're looking at the door. So that's the man door, the people door to come in and out. Sarah will be building something to where there'll actually be an automated door where they can come in and out of it. Is that going to be right next to this, Sarah?
On that little plywood area.
Right in the area. And you're not seeing the plywood because of the tree there. But Brian, do you have any pictures inside it? I know you've taken a bunch before, and we can look inside, but it's kind of divided into 2 segments. So talk about how it'll be used and how it's divided.
Okay, so it's divided long ways, or hot dog style. The roosts in the back are the sleeping area. Like I mentioned before.
So these
are the roosts in the back area. The the leghorns especially, as I mentioned, are just super crazy. So when you come in to collect eggs, the front part will be for egg collection. The back part is for them to get away from people if they want, have their nice quiet area, do their thing, stay relaxed, and lay lots of eggs.
We'll talk about that. So, and there we are looking up,
Yes.
and we have a place where light can come in the middle of it, and it's really a very nice building. It's actually really almost a 5-star hotel for chickens.
It is.
And eventually this unit is meant to house what, about 300 or something like that?
Yeah, about
in that
300,
range?
somewhere in there.
Right. So as Sarah said, she's in the construction process right now of one other one. So you missed one piece in that early stages. We did one other thing that we did.
What did we do?
We bought some adult birds.
Oh, yes, we did. I forgot about that.
And I don't know whether we have pictures of it. We do have a bunch of them other places, but tell what we did there.
So we bought a chicken tractor from another farm, and then we moved it to the ranch. So there's Cluck Norris and his lady. So Cluck Norris is actually from the Humane Society. He's a rescue. But anyway, we bought these other adult hens. There were 45 to 48 of them. And we moved them out. We moved their chicken tractor housing. We had to catch all these chickens on this ranch, put them into the chicken tractor, which is a red coop. How big is that one?
It's about 12 by 8.
Okay, so it fit right on the trailer. We put the chickens in and we drove them down the highway about an hour and a half, which that's their special adventure. And then they are laying the eggs right now. And then these girls on my lap are 2 more that came from friends that had them in the city, and they had to move and they couldn't keep them at their new place. So these 2 came. They're Benny and Sunny, Benedict and Sunny side up. So I've been kind of collecting these chickens as we go to try to increase volume because there's a lot of demand right now.
Yeah, and you're selling out
Yeah.
there's way more demand than you have supply for in the short term.
Yeah.
So just so everybody gets it, so we'll put it all together. We have at Sarah's farm has 3 different, let's call it 3 different groups of chickens now. One group is the adults, which we bought most of in one big buy, but we've been accumulating some others. And there's about 60 of them now.
Yeah, 60.
And they're laying all the time. We're going to talk about how many eggs that chickens lay on a regular basis, because I think there's some myths about that. And then we got the second group, which was the one that Brian's was showing the pictures in the brooder of. And those are, you told me the other day, about a month or less away from laying, right? If you looked at them today, they're going to lay in about a month, and there's about 250 of them in that range. Then the last group is the youngest group, that is the ones you've been seeing in the coop up the hill, and those are actually them outside.
Yeah,
right?
that's
the littlest one.
Yep.
So these are the youngest, and they're 2 or 3 weeks younger than the first group. So they'll start laying about 2 weeks after the first group. And all of these groups now are free range. So what does that mean? When are they just out all the time, or what's the daylight? What's a day in the life of a chicken at Mountain Sky Ranch?
So our chickens get out when there are people around. For right now, they'll have an automatic door soon. So they get out at about 8 o'clock whenever the first person shows up and lets them out. And then they free range all day. And I've managed to talk to Farmer Ben, who has been putting them in at about 9:30 because the young girls don't want to go inside. They want to go inside at the very, as soon as it's pitch dark. They don't want to go inside before that. So they're like crazy party girls. The other girls put themselves away at about 7 o'clock, the older group. But they free range all day long. Trying to get them in is impossible. I was getting them in with a bucket and a stick and making loud noise, and that worked for about a week, and then they figured it out, and now they just look at me when I bang on a bucket. So
and how about that middle group? What time do they go in?
Also about 9:30. They're the partiers
They're late
too.
too.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd say as chickens get older, they put themselves away sooner.
Okay.
Kind of like people.
And so that's a day sort of in the life of a chicken. And during the day, how much feed do you give them? Or are they just sort of out grabbing whatever they can find themselves?
The smaller group that's still growing a lot, I still feed them about 80 pounds a day in morning and at night. So they're eating a lot. They're eating close to 100 pounds a day.
And remember, that's 450 birds, just so you don't get
not
really,
one bird.
Yeah.
The big girls get about 12 pounds for the 45 of them, which is about a quarter pound each. And they get in the evening. I try to make them eat as much natural forage as I can. And that goes for all of them. I try to make them eat the whatever they can find, because feeding them when there's so much good grass and things around is just, yeah, kind of pointless.
And there's another group of chickens out at the ranch,
Oh.
and they actually come in 2 different groups also. One group, I believe, is 5 years or now over 5 years old. This is their 5th year, and they probably should not be around, and they're probably not laying anymore, although Deb actually believes they are. There were originally 8 or 9 of them. There are now 6 or so of them left, 5, Deb says. And then a second group came a year or 2 later, maybe. So they're 1 year old right now. So they're really going into their peak of laying. And Sarah will talk about timing on that in a minute. And there were how many of them, and how many of them are there now?
There are 6 girls and dog.
And a rooster. We'll talk about roosters in a minute. But they have been laying through the winter. And they were originally bought mainly for pest control, because they eat all kinds of things that we have around the farm. And I don't know what other people's experiences in our part of the world that are watching this right now, but I would bet you've got mosquitoes right now, you've got bugs. I hardly see any of those on our farm. And we have lots of water right now, especially this year. And Sarah and I were actually fishing the other night. And how many bugs did we see?
I didn't get bit one time.
No, yeah. And so I'm not saying, and the chickens, by the way, don't go down to where our water is at all. That is not inside their territory. But still, they do an amazing job of sort of dealing with. And so Deb's totally convinced that they're just their fly control alone is valuable. And we have a completely separate chicken tractor for them. They are their own little community. They probably interact every once in a while with the others, but they're not that far away physically, but they're in a little separate group. And so that just shows you what you can sort of have in different groups, right?
Yeah.
So notice in the slide that's on here now, if Brian's showing, she mentioned Cluck Norris, which is a rooster. How many roosters do you think that you have in the groups of the 750 or so that we're going to have? Yeah.
Probably like 15 or so.
Okay. And is that about the right number that you'd want to have?
Yeah, each rooster could handle up to 40 hens. They provide really great protection, and so having around 20 hens each is better, because hens like to eat all day long, and you've probably seen that. They just eat and peck, and they don't pay attention to the sky, where the rooster will stand out and watch for eagles and other predators and give warning for them to run and hide. So they're really great for that. Dog is valuable.
So the rooster that we have in this smaller group that is near with the alpacas is named Dog. So that's where that name came from. So this is Cluck Norris, and that brings up a good point. When we first got chickens out at the ranch, this group of that we talked about, we didn't have a rooster, and we would put them out in a free range situation during the day, and we did lose them to raptors, to birds of prey. We have eagles that are in our area. We have peregrine falcons. We have osprey, because we have a big lake that's very close. Lots of airborne predators. And we do have a problem with airborne predators. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it isn't the ones that are eating chickens. They're eating our eggs, actually. And so we'll talk about them. But so about 1 per 20 would be a good number if somebody had a smaller number of chickens.
If you have too few hens, they'll beat them up. The rooster will beat up the hen, as those new ones that we got on Friday are pretty beat up.
Okay.
So you have to have a good balance or enough space.
Okay. So what is our road ahead here? Let's talk through the next 6 months with your flock now, and what you'll be doing.
So you have to finish up Coop 2 and build a lot of nest boxes, because the 200 plus leghorns will begin laying at the end of this month or the beginning of next month, and there will be an explosion of eggs. So right now, farmers markets are selling out, and hopefully they continue to sell out so that I can keep this great customer base and serve them the new leghorn eggs. And then a couple weeks after that, so the coop 2 will be built. They'll have to bust out more nest boxes for coop 1, because then those tiny little girls that you're seeing there, if Brian's showing it, will begin laying. It's middle of July probably, and then we'll have even more eggs. So right now we have 4 farmers markets. One is going right now in Old Town, Fort Collins. The second one starts next week. It's at Jessup Farm, which is a new farmers market, artisan farm area in Fort Collins.
Here is the current farmers market, and you notice in the back of the booth a banner for Sarah's Pick of the Coop, and notice Raisin Roots Farm. So Sarah already mentioned Ben the farmer. So this is the two of our on-site businesses that are partnering together and are presenting their materials and their products at the farmers market. So anyway, keep going.
So then Berthoud starts the end of June, and then where's our fourth one?
Loveland.
Oh yes, Loveland. I forgot about Loveland. Loveland I'll be doing by myself with another farmer that I know, Hops and Peppers. They had a booth, and Loveland was full of produce people, so they didn't have an egg producer at all though. So I'm really looking forward to Loveland, because I will be the one and only egg producer. So that's really nice. So then once those 4 are going, I also sell at this really random place. It's the Cosmic Dog. It's a self-service dog wash in Loveland. And it seems like an odd place to sell eggs, but she's been selling out for me every week too. Just a good customer base there. Trying to get my face around. And then hopefully we'll have some more Honor refrigerators, which is a refrigerator with a bucket on top for money. Eggs in the fridge, bucket on top, and you just hope that people pay. And I've never had an issue with it before. People always put in the right amount of money and take their right amount of eggs. And then looking forward, the end of July, hopefully, there's a grocery store or a grocery store co-op grocery store in Nederland. Where's that? By Boulder. And they're looking at buying eggs, and they'd be selling about 30 dozen a week. And so I'm hoping to just keep expanding with things like that.
By the way, don't let me forget, I have a guy who's sort of the head of economic development for Netherlands. So we hadn't even talked about Netherlands, so I wasn't sure of that. All right, so tell me about the day in the life of a hen.
The day in the life of a hen?
Yeah.
So they wake up early, and whoever lets them out first, they go out. So the hen wakes up. She probably wakes up at about 5, and then gets let out at about 8. Runs out of the coop, as you've seen, down the hill, and eats all of the grass that she can find, and then likes to chill in the shade for the hot part of the day. And in the morning time, usually before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they'll lay an egg. They lay about 1 a day. So they'll run back to the coop, lay their egg, go back to the shade for a while, maybe mill around and eat some. Their roosters take them to different areas. So some of those chickens have been laying eggs with our rooster Red, which I don't think we have a picture of, but Red has been taking his hens down to see the boy alpacas and laying eggs in the boy alpacas feeders. So sometimes they don't make it back to their coop to lay their eggs, but then they eat some more in the evening. I feed them in the evenings, and then they go back to bed at about 7 for the adults. The little ones are more brave, and they stay outside longer, and they also don't hang out in the shade as much. They eat more because they're still growing. So they spend their whole day eating and scratching and starting to crow, a few of them.
And one thing you didn't mention, when a female lays an egg, what do they typically do?
Oh, they do their egg talk or their egg song. So one will start, and then the rest of them, she's so happy that she laid her eggs, so she makes this crazy noise, and then all the rest make a crazy noise for about 30 seconds. So you get, throughout the day, these little songs going.
And then they do something at times like we're seeing in this picture here. So what's going on here?
So these two, this is yesterday's picture, they went broody, which means they don't want to do anything. They want to have babies. And they won't do anything except sit on a nest. You can take them and you can put them on the ground and they'll sit and be fluffed up like that because they just want to have babies. So you could tell them no and put them in a wire cage with a wire floor suspended above the ground for a couple weeks and they'll stop. But I don't like doing that. So these two, since I like them, I gave them 11 eggs, and 10 of those eggs have hatched. So
and these are the little chicks that are what? How old?
The day today. That was yesterday. They were just hatched.
So they were hatched yesterday.
Yeah.
And you told me something earlier, or Janine did. I know you said it, that the moms tend to do a better job. So when you do hatching in incubators, which you do as giving presentations for schools and different things, and we'll talk about that, that you get like what's the difference in hatching rate for an incubator versus what you're getting as you're putting eggs with moms?
So I get normally like a 75 to 80% if I'm doing things well in an incubator. And the moms usually get, 90+% hatch rate, which is awesome. And I don't understand it. They get, I have this controlled box that has controlled temperature and humidity, and they sit on eggs. They get up to go to the bathroom and eat and drink. They were cold. The other day I went in there and the one decided to make a nest in a completely different area, and I was afraid she killed all the babies. The eggs were physically cold, but I threw them back under her, and yesterday they all hatched. So I'm not sure. Nature does it better.
And Deb had this first group had one, right, that was being the same behavior, and you put one egg under her yesterday, last night. Did it hatch today?
Little yellow chick.
And so now let's take a little bit further ahead. Those chicks that you bought, the two different groups, the group of 250 and 450, those were raised in an incubator,
Yep.
I'm assuming, and they were bought from somebody who sells chickens commercially.
Yes.
Right? And then we brought them back, and you put them in an environment that would have light, right? But what do you have to have for little chickens, little ones?
You have to have constant food and water that is available to them. And sometimes you have to put it, I don't have any strange little pictures of their feeders, but sometimes they don't understand feeders yet. So you have to put it in a pan and peck like mom would. You have to have water that's also shallow enough that they won't fall in.
These are not, how old are these? These are not more than.
They were 2 days old,
Okay.
3 days old.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So their little feeder you can see in the back left of the picture. I made that one out of ice cream bucket and a dollar store, what is that called? Like a party dish.
Right, party dish.
And so it has to be super shallow so they can reach it. So adult feeders, they can't reach in yet because they're too small. And I understand that. Sometimes I can't reach things either. So they need food and water, and they need an environment that is above 80 degrees. You would like it to be on the ground about 90, just like under mom, her body temperature would be really warm. But 80 degrees will do okay.
And with mom, and how will mom change that? Because now we showed that picture before, then we've got 12 or 13 babies now, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is mom going to handle that? Because I'm sure she's going to start teaching them a little bit.
Yeah.
Something.
So in a day or two, we'll let them out, and she will show them where to eat and drink. And the cool part about chickens is that the yolk, a lot of people have the misconception that the yolk is the baby chick. That's not true. The yolk is the feed source for the baby chick for up to 3 days. So for 3 days, baby chick doesn't need water or food. It's good to go. Stay nice and warm under mom, and then mom will take it out, and she'll peck around and show them what to eat and what to drink. And they talk a lot. They make these little purring sounds and teach them.
And roosters, again, let's go back to them and sort of the natural situation we have here. Again, those eggs that you're getting when you're buying them from the normal supermarket for $2, how many roosters are there when those folks are growing those things?
None.
And there are millions of these hens in a very confined space. But so there aren't any roosters. What is the benefit from the rooster other than you gave one already, that they're helping protect against predators? But I ask you this question: how many of our females will get impregnated daily? So how many of these eggs will be fertile?
Most of my eggs are fertile. If you take one and crack it open and look at the yolk, if there's a little white circle, that's where it's called the blastoderm. If it has like a bullseye instead of just a circle, but a bullseye in the center, that means it's fertilized. It doesn't change anything about the quality of the egg or anything until mom sits on it for 4 hours. After four plus hours of sitting on it, then it starts developing.
Is there any additional nutritional value in a fertilized egg that's taken before the 4 hours versus one that isn't fertilized?
Nope, there's no difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about taste? Are these eggs going to taste any different than ones that are grown for those chickens that are in this?
I believe so. And I sell my eggs every week. So my eggs are graded AA, and that's the size of the air cell. And so when the air cell gets bigger, it's because they're older. So if you shine a light into a store egg, it'll be grade B by the time you get it, even though it may say grade A. And that just means that more air has been around it. And they also package them wrong. They package them with the air cell at the bottom, so it spreads up around the egg, whereas I package them with the fat side with the air cell on the top so that the cell stays the smallest possible. But there is a difference because they eat different food, and the yolk is much more yellow because they're available, or they have grasses and greens available
all the time.
Yeah.
in this picture that we have now, I think we're seeing
That's fine.
brown, white, and maybe even some bluish colored eggs, because I think that's one thing you talk about. And so what's the difference in color of eggs, and why is there?
So you can tell the difference, or sorry, you can tell what color egg a chicken will lay by their earlobe, which is kind of silly. If they have a white or light colored earlobe, they'll lay a white egg. If they have a colored earlobe like red, they'll lay either a green, blue, or brown egg. There's no nutritional difference, and I like to just have different breeds around, and I think selling rainbow dozens is something creative, and I just like having variety.
I think you told me that there's some very unusual one that'll produce almost black eggs that people will pay a lot
Oh
for.
yeah, the black chicken. Yeah, it's pure black chicken. I think it actually lays pink eggs, but the chicken itself is worth $200. They have black organs. They're completely black. It's weird. Their eyes are black.
So what about varieties and different kinds? And if I was going to be a hobbyist and have them at home and I just want a few eggs, does it really matter what kind I have, and what is the difference? And you've already talked about leghorns as being feisty and such.
Yeah.
And so
in your backyard, I would suggest having like Rhode Island Reds, which are very friendly, or Buff Orpington, or things that are a little bit more solid and can't fly, because the two that I got last week that were on my lap in that picture, there were 4 of them, and one flew over the fence into the neighbor's yard and their dog ate it. So in the home situation, you can trim wings, or you can just get a bird that can't really fly. So there is wing trimming available though, and it takes a couple minutes a bird, and it's pretty simple.
But if you have some breeds, they won't fly.
Yeah, they just are too big.
And again, I sure don't see our girls, any of them, in the air very often.
No.
I mean, you and I have I've seen this. They will get stuck behind a fence where they can't even get out.
Yeah.
Right. So where it's not even that high of a fence, 36, 3 foot or so fence. So even if they can certainly get up there because they'll roost on top of them, but
They don't understand.
Yeah, they don't figure out how to get out. So what about the day in the life of a rooster? And this one, people think about noise. And so
Okay.
tell me how noisy roosters are.
Everyone assumes that roosters just crow in the morning, and as you've probably noticed, they crow all day long, and they'll have conversations with the other groups of roosters back and forth, and that's a territory talk. The roosters spend less time lounging in the shade and a little bit more time keeping their eye on the sky, and they actually go and show the ladies where the good food is. So if I throw out treats, like Tina Turner, who is, if he's on the screen, he's our crazy looking Houdan rooster. He especially likes to show the ladies where the food is, and he only weighs about 3 pounds because of that, because he lets them eat first and eat the good stuff first, and then he eats. So they spend a lot more time just being chivalrous.
And now let's go life cycle wise. How many years will a hen lay, and will their percentage of days they lay go down over time, or does it all of a sudden just drop off, or how does that work?
Breed depending, it can change. So like leghorns are bred mainly for egg production, kind of like Holstein cattle, and they were bred to lay all their eggs right now. So they start months ahead sometimes of other hens, and they lay very, very consistently for about 2 years, and then they drop off to about 1 or 2 a week, which is pretty drastic. Other chickens, like Buff Orpingtons, for example, they're really big, and there's actually a Buff Orpington in the background of the Tina Turner picture. She's huge. She weighs probably about 8 pounds. It takes a long time to reach maturity
Is this
for her.
Tina Turner?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it takes her longer to reach maturity, and she'll lay eggs very well from the time she's about 6 months old to about 2 years old, and then she'll lay 3 or 4 eggs a week and then slow down over a lifetime. I did have a 12-year-old chicken who laid an egg a couple times a week, still all the way up till she was 12. So they don't always just stop. It kind of depends on the breed, but peak cycle or peak production usually goes from about 6 months to 2.5.
And what about options for those chickens after they're kind of through that laying cycle?
For me, I want to adopt them into backyard homes, because as Deb has found out, having a few chickens lay a couple eggs a day, you can get quite a lot of eggs pretty quickly. So having them be adopted into someone's house would be a better option for me, because I had that 12-year-old hen. She was still doing really well. She got stepped on by a cow, actually. So everyone has asked me how old my oldest chicken was before she died. She was 12, but I don't know how long she would have lived. But I think that having that option to adopt or have them in your in your backyard, or the hobbyist to have 4 in their yard and get a couple eggs a day and have the pest control. That's really what I want to do with mine. So at about 2.5 or 3, try to adopt them out. If that doesn't work, then you can butcher them.
So we're having several questions from our audience. Charles had asked, can you forward contact info? Absolutely. We'll have some of that at the end of the presentation we'll give out, and certainly can get you information. And then, is the production to the point that you'll be able to consider selling to a weekly CSA? I think that means to probably someone else that's in a CSA. Now, we have our own CSA for a market farm, of which there was a webinar earlier this year by Ben, our farmer, but he's still not fully up to production yet. And so he can't use the total amount that you're going to be producing.
Yeah.
So the reality is, we're looking for still all kinds of marketing opportunities, right, Sarah?
Yeah, and I have talked with Ben about doing an add-on share for his CSA, but not until July or so when I actually have the volume. I don't want to sell things ahead when I'm not going to have them. So I'm going to wait for a while to do those CSAs.
And what about winter? Do they produce year round? And you've talked about 90% sort of production during this really nice time of the year.
Yeah.
How will that change in the winter?
So the leghorns will continue being leghorns and bang out eggs. The others will drop down to about 80%. They take days off. The light is not quite right, and you could force them to lay by adding light into their coop. However, they have a limited amount of eggs. So I like to keep their longevity by not having lights in the coop, but they do lay eggs still.
Okay. How about the day in the life of the chicken farmer once you're done with your construction? Let's say you're done with the construction side. Now it's just maintenance of chickens. What do you do?
Well, for July, hopefully everything's set up. And for the first couple weeks, I only have about 200 eggs, so it won't be as crazy. But I wake up.
200 a day, by the way.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to wake up, come out to the ranch. Everyone should be out with the automated doors too, which will be nice. Feed and water everyone, which takes about an hour and a half to clean all the waters and get all the poo out. And they like to poo in weird places. So there's a lot of cleaning and then feeding and watering of everyone. And then my afternoons are spent cleaning eggs, or they will be. Right now I just clean in the evening about my 3 dozen that I get a day. So that's not that many. But yeah, so then in the afternoons cleaning, then in the evenings watering and feeding again, and then marketing. Lots of marketing is going to be happening soon. Thursdays have 1 market, Saturdays 2 markets going at the same time, and then Sundays 1 market. Plus then delivering to my regulars and delivering to the grocery stores and filling on our fridges and doing all of those things.
So let's go ahead a year.
Okay.
And now you're operating, and maybe our numbers are up to a few more chickens than we have now, but not a lot more. Let's say we got 900 instead of this many. There's 3 coops out there now. Everything's built. What can a person make growing chickens? So if optimal situation, how much are we going to be selling?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say make it annual sales, and then how much of that could be profit? And remember, we're not accountants. We're not making representations that you should, bank your income on or whatever. But what's potential? What's a potential situation?
I mean, with 900 chickens, we could expect about 800 eggs a day, and you could probably make gross about 60 or 70,000, right? Would that make sense? Yeah. And then the main cost is feed, and they did get back to me at Ranchway, and we've come up with our own feed.
By the way, we buy feed in fairly large quantities, so don't think about if you have 4 or 5 at home that you're going to buy feed like that we do. But.
Yeah. So anyway, feed is the main cost. So, I mean, I don't know how much you could make.
By the way, I think your numbers were bigger than 60,000 for 900 chickens. I would say they were closer to 80 or 90,000. Okay. And the net, when you take out, even if you were to hire labor and your feed costs, your vet, because there are some veterinary costs that are involved. Maybe we're now at a net of 60, let's say, something like that. So let's go to that, veterinary, because this is pretty amazing. How many chickens of the total that we've gotten, because I think you probably know almost exactly, have you lost?
Well, the magpie issue, as we were going to talk about,
Yeah, we'll talk.
that was a kind of a bad one. But otherwise, I've only lost about 30 probably total, which is, it's a pretty good number. We did have with the magpies, maybe 40. We had a magpie come in and scare all of them into a corner, and they suffocated. And then we also, during building one day, didn't realize that we scared some of them into a corner and lost about 5 more. So that was not health related.
Let's just go to health related.
Okay. So our feed, we got a bad batch of feed, and the kernels in the feed were too big, but they really like corn, and they had cleaned their machine with these flakes of corn, which caused them to rupture internally. So that we lost 8 or 9, I think, with that. And then I've had a couple broken legs, which is just like children break legs, being crazy. They were crazy. They broke legs. And one broke her back. So we've only had one, and I just got the necropsy results back, and she did die of cancer, one of our older ones, which is kind of common. They are bred to lay so many eggs. You also, breed in some bad things occasionally.
Okay, but there hasn't been bacterial disease or anything. What if there was? What would you do? Let's say you knew you had something that was sort of spreading. Oh, let me go to this one. How much have we spent? How many veterinarian visits have we had?
The chickens, no.
None. Okay.
Well, one.
And she almost was surprised that I said that. And Deb, in the same period of time, in 6 months, and we have a rather large alpaca herd, but how many veterinary visits have we had? She won't even know the number, I don't think.
Several.
Well, yes, but it was for
Doesn't matter, but you've had a lot.
three or 4 because of health certificates needed for showing.
Yeah, she hasn't had very many from unhealthy
Probably.
Animals, but
Probably one. Yeah. Well, and I planned out those visits.
yeah,
But I would like to mention that if they are sick, I will take them to the vet. I don't do the organic. They're not going to be treated. If they're sick, they go to the vet. They get treated, which that is different. That is something that a lot of producers won't admit to. No, we are 100% organic. We will never take them to the vet. But I think that is cruel in a way. And that so if they're sick and they need to go to the vet, they go to the vet. If I'm sick, I go to the doctor. So that's something I feel passionate about, even though some of my customers won't buy because of that. They go through the proper withdrawal times and everything they're back to being healthy animals when their eggs come back into production. But if they have to go to the vet, I really would like them to be in their best health. And so I'll take them or I'll treat them.
So we're fortunate. We live right here where there's a vet college. But if you're living somewhere, most places, what kind of vets deal with chickens?
Not very many. They'll give you the broad antibiotics like that cows can also receive and hope, fingers crossed. But like CSU has their own avian program right now, which is very cool. Otherwise, a lot of times they'll just euthanize for you. So. Vet question.
Yeah,
has bird flu been an issue? So it has been an issue in the States. This is for Mark. Not in Colorado yet. That's why my one got necropsied the other day. CSU is trying to keep a good handle on that. So they're doing free necropsies, free exams on all your birds.
Mark, are you willing to talk? Do you have your mic? We're going to try something here. Because I think I've given you the chance you could possibly talk. His question has sort of been broadcast here. Oh, here we go. I'm going to invite her. So you are now invited. Mark, say something. We all hear it here, I'm sure, Ryan. Remember, there's a 45-second delay, so he's not hearing us quite yet. While we're waiting for Mark, you always need help.
Yes.
So needing help means that you could be the people that could come help. They could become chicken farmers themselves at some place. They'd learn, right? So let's sort of 2 questions here. How much did you learn about chicken farming in college versus ag in general, let's say, but how much about chicken farming really in college?
CSU does nothing about chickens. We had one lab where we dissected a chicken tract, and the professor didn't even know what he was doing. I taught that part because he did the cows and the pigs. So there's not a whole lot of learning about chickens, but I continue to have my passion. And, maybe I learned some other things in other classes, like disease classes. There's some broad diseases that maybe could overlap. But I think my ag business degree helped more, just learning how to market a little bit.
So, and then I interrupted. What about Mark? Are you able to say anything yet? I'm curious. We're just trying this, and he may not have his mic on or anything. So it says that he could be. We've invited him to ask a question. I don't know. I don't know what he has to do, but I think he is the point where he could be a speaker. Actually, you know what? Yeah, no, it's under Mark's. He could be a speaker. At least it's my screen saying that he could be. Anyway, we'll wait for a second on that. What about how could people help? And not just you, but I'm sure lots of chicken farmers have this opportunity.
I mean, there's always like marketing. Hand out flyers if you want. If you're not a country person, you can come out to the ranch and help out. But with the bird flu, for me, you're going to have to wear specific shoes, at least right now. There's farmers markets selling if you want to come and sell. I teach classes in schools, and I can always use help with those too. I take in an incubator and hatch out eggs, and so having help there is fun. Well,
what have we talked about too, about a combination of education and help? So what have we talked about that we might do?
Oh yeah, some classes. So come out in the morning, learn about chickens, help out in the afternoon, or do hands-on learning, building coops, clipping wings for your backyard, raising baby chicks, having some of the baby chicks that we hatch after the class is over.
What are our coops made of? Sorry.
They're made out of pallets.
Is that pretty cool?
It's pretty cool. It's pretty unique. And the planter had this idea the other day of putting in the soil and growing plants out of the pallet.
Right.
So that'll be another maybe different group of people that could come and help.
Right. And the only thing really that was brand new on that coop, which is a pretty good size, again, it's enough to probably grow 300 or 400 chickens. What was new there?
The roof.
The roof. That's right. Everything else was.
Yep.
Pallets.
The roosts are made out of branches.
Yeah, you probably
which are actually
that.
Really good for their feet because it'll avoid bumblefoot. A lot of people use 2x4s and things that are smooth, and chickens actually need that roughness, sort of as like a nightly pedicure.
And it looks pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So here's contact information. As you can see, it's got Sarah's email. It's got our website for Sarah's Pick of the Coop, which is under construction right now, and it's got some work that needs to be done. Facebook page. First number is actually Sarah's cell phone. The second is our office. I would recommend the office phone for general questions, just so you're not bothering Sarah. And secondly, there is no cell coverage up at the ranch where Sarah's at most of the time. And that way, but there is, the office is open from 8 until 5 pretty much every day. And even if there's no one there, it goes to a voice message system and we can all get the messages pretty easily. You can always know about whether it's Sarah's eggs by the container. Notice a little marketing, and it's in the picture too. She uses a
purple container.
Purple container, and not quite the same as everybody else, right? So we're getting close to being to the end. Mark, I'm assuming you never did respond to whether you could talk or not. So I don't know whether that worked. We'll try that another time. Actually turning that off. Any other questions that people have, you could throw them in here now. We are getting right at the time when we try to finish this off. We do replays of this. So Brian and Emily, who are doing our editing and producing here right now, they'll be editing the webinar and have it available to watch within the next couple of days. But until that time, I'm always messed up on this. We leave the original one up, don't we, Brian, until they're edited. So it's always available. So it's just for a few minutes, right, Ryan, that we take the unedited version down. So you could go in an hour from now and watch the replay. Please tell your friends about it. There's lots of really good information here. Sarah's an awesome guest and also a partner. It's neat to have her here. We don't do these kinds very often where they're with our actual partners that we have. So it's fun to do. What else do you have to say? Anything more that you want to tell the group?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Find me at the farmers markets.
Yeah, and Charles, I don't know if you're local in our area here, but we'd love to have anything you might give us advice on. You've been throwing in a bunch of questions here. So our next speaker is going to be Elizabeth Moser. and she is the co-owner and founder of Loco Foods. And Loco Foods is a food distribution center up in Fort Collins, which is in our local area. And it's actually, I think, a conglomeration of putting together people that produce from a variety of different kinds of circumstances into selling them in one place. Is this similar to what you were talking about? Or so maybe some other
maybe.
I
haven't heard of this
might
one.
be.
Need to
So
talk to him.
anyway, that will be Elizabeth Moser, who is the co-owner and founder of Loco Foods.
Mark came on.
Mark, are you there?
Yeah, he's now in the webinar.
Yeah, sorry, I had to install a plugin.
Here we go.
Yeah, I didn't have
All right. So Mark has been a staff member of ours now for over 2 years. Mark does a bunch of writing for us and helps with a whole bunch of things. He and I were on the phone earlier today with 3 of our other staff members that are in Pakistan. And even though there's a rivalry sports-wise and things between Pakistan and Bangladesh, Mark, you've gotten to know those guys to where you'd call them friends, right? Today?
Right, yeah. They're great.
Right. So this is the first time we're trying this, and you hear it? Is that we coming across good to you, and we can hear you well?
Yeah. It feels really great to be able to speak on your show. When I've been watching your show over 2 years.
Right. Yeah. Well, we appreciate having you. So, did you get the announcement pretty quickly, and you just had to hook up your stuff? Is that right?
Yeah, I just got a notice from Google saying that I need a plugin, and then they gave me a link to install, and I installed and came back.
So it worked pretty easily?
Right, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much. We've gone over a little bit. Thank you, Mark. We'll be chatting tomorrow, I'm sure. And thanks to everybody from Northern Colorado and Bangladesh. Adios, and we'll talk to everybody in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.